and gentlemen. Today we're honored to have as our guest speaker Joseph Mack. In March 1943, an 18-year-old Joe Mack was inducted into the U.S. Army and was assigned to the 112th Infantry Regiment of the 28th Division. The following year, 1 month after the D-Day landing, the 28th Division that had been held in reserve in England landed on Normandy Beach. Mr. Mack fought in 5 major battles across Europe, including the Battle of the Bulge. He was wounded in Germany. Mr. Mack was awarded the Bronze Star, the Combat Infantry Badge, the Purple Heart, and the Presidential Unit Citation, among other honors. This summer, through the Greatest Generations Foundation, Mr. Mack returned to Normandy to participate in the 70th anniversary of D-Day. While there, he was awarded the Legion of Honor, France's highest decoration. Please welcome Joe Mack.
You don't know, there's not much more I can tell you.
That show was over. That was over.
Pretty good introduction. But anyway, thank you all for coming today, and I think, with Kathy and, the daughters here, I think that's great that everybody should have a little better idea from a viewpoint of just a plain old infantryman rather than all these reporters and all these other things. My mind was, this is what I experienced, that's all I can tell you. I know what I went through. And of course, back in 1942, I graduated from high school, and I got a job with IBM. I was only 17 years old. Back then, you could work with working papers. And so when I was 18, I get my draft notice the same week. I was 18, I got my draft notice, and I had a report for active duty in April, and went up to Fort Niagara. Well, going up to the fort, I have to tell you an interesting story. My parents and everything went to the railroad station with me, and I thought, they'll see me on the way as I go up on the train, go up to the Fort Niagara. And I thought, well, okay. And I heard my mother say, "Have you talked to Joe yet?" And he said, "No." He said, "He's going to get on that train. You better talk to him." So I come over, and he gave me a big hug and says, "Be a good boy." That was my sex education for my parents. So I got up to Fort Niagara, and they showed me all these films of venereal disease. Oh my gosh, how do you get that? Somebody touch you, or cook your food, or kiss you, or hug you? All these different things. And I said, I better find out what. I knew the one way you could get it, but I didn't know all the other ways. Maybe you could get it. It's like Ebola today. All you got to do is touch somebody, and you get it. You don't know. So I didn't know. So I really found out, the answer to all my questions. I didn't even want a woman to serve me a hamburger until I found out. That was my experience. And then we went down to Fort Leonard Wood, and we had a basic infantry training. And, with the bayonet and all kinds of guns, you've got to fire all the M1s and the machine guns and the mortars, and you learned how to fight with the bayonet, and they used to go out to the rifle range, and it was warm and hot, and a lot of the guys were falling over from heat exhaustion. So they lined everybody up in the morning, and they give you, you put 2 salt can pills in your canteen, and you marched out with peanut butter sandwiches for the day. You can imagine you're going to get thirsty. And anyway, then I was assigned to the 28th Infantry. They were a National Guard outfit from Pennsylvania originally, and they had a lot of older men in there, and they had some of the first draftees in there. And they wanted a bunch of 18-year-olds to come in and to bring the age down under 30 if they're going to be a combat unit. They want them down under 30. So that was the idea of having us 18-year-olds go and join the 28th Infantry. and we went over to England, actually Wales, and we were stationed at Fort Barry, Wales, and we had more training there. And we had ship-to-shore training, going in on vessels and rushing up on the shore like pretend there's a pillbox there and go through all the actions. And then, of course, getting ready for this big amphibious landing. It was going to take a lot of doing, a lot of people getting together, a lot of plans had to be made. And then we went from there up to Brighton Beach, and we did more of that kind of training. And then we went down into closer to Portsmouth, where we were kind of in a holding area. We were supposed to go in on D-Day, but the last minute they called off. They said that every place we wanted to go, they tried to put us, we would have been slaughtered because the Germans had super defensive stations at that particular point. And so we were out there on the channel for several days before we did go in, even 2 weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it was. So it was quite an experience, and that was what it was like in 1944. I mean, 42, 43, 44, getting ready to go. And of course, when I was in England, I got to go to London a couple times and got to see quite a bit of London. And we went on 100-mile marches, and we never stopped training all the while. I mean, you were kept in condition every morning. You get out, do calisthenics, and run up and down the beach. We had this long-legged Texan captain, and he would go like this here, and I'm back in the bed going like this, just trying to keep up, But he's making these big strides and everything, and anyway, and then of course at the well, we show the first picture, and then the next one is there's my beautiful daughter. And she's helped put all this together for me, ordered all these medals for me, and it's been my first hand assistant. I couldn't do it without her. I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her, because we were persistent in following through on this. We went to the honor flight together, and a couple of years earlier, and I realized when I went to the honor flight that there's a lot of stories has to be told, and that. Those people, the ones I saw in my mind when I was visiting the memorial in Washington, I knew they're not going to be able to tell the story. But their story is my story. My story is their story. I mean, I'm not alone. On invasion alone, they lost 2,500 people. This on Invasion Day, on D-Day. I mean, because of the way things flowed at that particular point in time. And so 1943, 44, they weren't the best of years for me. And I saw a lot. But going back, looking over some of the things here now, this is just a sample of the landing craft that they use it for amphibious landings. And, we talk about what is D-Day. D-Day, where did the name come from? Well, it means this is the deadline date. Like if you were going to go for an operation and they said, you're going to have it on Wednesday at 10 o'clock, you're going to have the operating room, you're going to have other doctors there, you're going to have nurses there, you're going to have, in other words, there's a lot of scheduling to have everybody in place. Well, that's the deadline date. That's the date, that's the time, that's the time you go. And there's no late input. You don't get on the table and say, well, I don't think I want to do this today. You got to do it. You're on your way on your gurney into the operating room, and you go no stopping there. And so whether we're ready or not, if we're ready, fine. If we're not ready, we go anyway. So the next picture was at the Rochester Airport. We had a lot of people coming to the airport, seeing us off. They had the news media there, and it was quite a tribute to, I felt for us veterans as we embarked going down to the Douglas Airport down in Washington. And then we went down to Douglas Airport, and we got to have lunch there. Or it was supposed to be a dinner. They were going to have a wonderful dinner for us. And we went to the United Airlines lounge, and we had sandwiches and a drink. That was the most big dinner. Well, sandwiches and drink were sort of like happened quite a bit. And then when we got on the plane late at night, or well, early at night, I guess, it was around 6 or 7 o'clock, and we flew all night long, and we landed. Of course, we went right into action. They went right over to the Brookwood Cemetery. This might work. No. Brookwood American Cemetery, and we were on the front steps there, and they gave us quite a spiel about the number of Americans where they were buried, and there's quite a few World War I veterans buried there, some World War II, but mainly the World War I. And this is the first picture of the group that we had, and there was 28 Army veterans there. There was supposed to be 30, but 2 at the last minute, their health wouldn't allow them to go on the trip. And we had 19 from the Army, 7 from the Army Air Corps, and 3 from the Navy. And then, of course, here we are singing "God Bless America," and these are the vets that I was with at the Brookwood Cemetery. And then we were supposed to go to a traditional English brunch, which ended up being more of a snack than another sandwich and a drink. But we stayed at the Holiday Inn in Portsmouth, England. And on Sunday was supposed to be a day off, and we got to go to St. John's Cathedral at Portsmouth. And the bus picked us up there and took us right over to, on Sunday, still on our day off, we went over to the D-Day Museum, which was very, very impressive. And they've done a wonderful job there. This is the embroidery, and you really would be interested in this. It took 5 years to do all the embroidery around that whole area. 5 years, and you know, a lot of, they call it Operation Overlord. And it was a beautiful piece of work. But it also, they had tanks and amphibious landing craft, they had jeeps, they had everything that the GIs and the English soldiers would be using in the battle, or going into battle. And it was, and at that point, some of the veterans started telling their stories. And this is a veteran, he's a Tom Joseph Piker, and he was a glider pilot. And that's the glider, picture of the glider behind him. It was a big glider, it carried the Jeep, the general's Jeep. And he's telling a story about they came in for a landing on D-Day. Why, the minute they got over the coast, everything blacked out. There was nothing. He couldn't see. It's just a wall of clouds, and he really didn't know for sure where he was at. And when he landed, they used to build these 3-foot mounds of dirt, almost like brick. And the trailer hit one, bang, and it hit the other one, bang, and the Jeep went right out the front end of the glider. And they were supposed to land the glider and then fasten it and let it go out. But when they landed, boom, out went the Jeep. And it took the Jeep's driver, he was still on the Jeep, put his jaw way over here. So they took him to the aid station, and the doctor took one look at him, and he said, "Well, I think we can help you." And he went, "Wow!" And put the jaw right back in place.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, that was one of his several stories that he had. And I thought that was one of the more interesting ones. How that medic slapped his jaw right back into place. He said, "I can talk again." So, and then this is Monday. We went to the Portsmouth Dockyard, which was a big facility, very big facility. We had a lot of people that came and interviewed us there. They had reporters from England, some of the reporters that were on the trip with us from the United States, they were there taking stories from the different vets and all that. It was very, very interesting. And the next one, I'm going to let Barbie here take over here for a minute. I have macular degeneration, and I don't do so good on the reading.
Yeah, and he needs a lot of light, big letters and a lot of light.
I can read that.
So I am his daughter Barbara.
I'm sorry I didn't introduce you, Barbara Perkins.
That's okay. And this is British veteran Jim Baker, and he was one of those determined to keep the mood upbeat. At the age of 92, he says, "I'm too old for any nonsense." Gesturing at a group of American veterans during a pause in the day's proceedings, he added, "I used to curse at these guys." He said, "I used to call them all names under the sun, but the truth is there aren't any buggers better than this lot." And then they had lunch with the British D-Day veterans, and they met and talked with them.
Yeah. So,
And what did you have to eat for lunch?
yeah. Yeah, we had mashed potatoes, a stew, and a traditional English dessert, which was more bread. Then we went from there to the Southwick House. Southwick House was where Eisenhower made the final decision on D-Day. And they say when he made the decision, he went up to the room and he prayed, I guess, and he knew what he had let loose, that it wasn't going to be nice, but that he had to make the decision, so he made the D-Day decision. And but then one interesting thing we did do that same day, we went to an English pub and had fish and chips. And they were really good. And they had a lot of people in the dining room area. When we came in, they moved everybody out, and the GIs took over. And that was nice. They really extended the hospitality to us, you know. And we got the VIP treatment all the way down the line. And this next one is a nice story. Barbie's going to read that for me too.
Yeah, usually I'm pretty close to Dad. So this is Bill Millen. He was a Scottish piper, and the Scottish troops have a bagpiper that leads them into battle, pipes while they're in battle, and then leads them out of battle. So as they were getting ready to disembark from their landing craft, Lord Lovett asked Private Bill Millen to play a tune known as the Highland Laddie. And so Private Millen played this ancient march as the troops waded ashore on Sword Beach. And as he stepped off the landing ramp into the water, his kilt floated up around him like a ballerina's tutu. And the soldier next to him was shot in the face and killed instantly, and his body bumping against the piper's bare legs. And as tradition dictated, he marched up and down the beach, standing erect with his pipes. And while all those around him were taking cover as best they could. Later, he led them as they left the beach, heading inland, piping the tune, Road to the Isles. Now, Bill Millen was amazed that he was not shot. Not only did he play standing up, but with his great Highland bagpipes skirling over the noise of the battle, he was hard to ignore. And sometime later, captured German soldiers told him they didn't shoot him because they thought he was a crazy man. Let me catch up.
Okay.
Okay.
And then this is on a boat they had there in the harbor. He went from one boat, he went over on this boat, and he went out of the harbor playing his bagpipes.
Reenacting.
Yeah, reenactment. It was 2014. I'm jumping back forth from 1944 to 2014. And this is a big ferry. This is a lot bigger than the one we had in Rochester, I'll tell you. And it was huge, and they had trucks and cars and big lounging areas, and we had a lot of people coming and interviewing us, and on the ferry we had more sandwiches and a drink. That was pretty good. So anyway, the honor guard here greeted us as we went from Portsmouth, the landing to get on the ferry. And then when we didn't have to wait ashore this time. We went to the beach. What's the name of that?
Cherbourg.
Cherbourg. That's where we beached, and we got off, and they put us in this nice bus. And that pass right there on the corner of the bus where the arrow is, that's what gave us the VIP treatment wherever we went. People would see it, they'd start clapping, and thank you, and all that. And of course, that was a special security pass because we've been cleared by the FBI and everybody. They did all kinds of check to make sure that we weren't some kind of fanatic or something, or whatever. And then they took us to where we met our host families. Now, over 100 of these French host families said they would be honored if they could, have a GI stay with them for the 2 weeks they were there. And so each one of us had our own host family, and these are the two people I had, Alan and Ann Crozier. And neither one of them could speak French, and of course, or speak English, and I couldn't speak French the other way around. And then the next picture is the picture of their family. The lady on the end there, she was married to an Englishman, and she lived outside of London. So she was my interpreter and communicating with the family. So that really helped out. That kind of made the day, although Anne, the host family there, Anne, she said, she wrote it. Somebody must have wrote a note for her. And she said, Joe, there's so many things I'd like to ask you about America and about your family and all that. And it's hard because I don't know how to speak English and you don't understand French. So, they're quite interested in, how we lived and wanted to hear our stories too. And this is the road to their family house here. And this is the house. Now these big buildings and the rest would be farmland all the way around. All the dairy herds and everything else would be located there. They had one room where they did their baking, and I had visions of the fireplaces you see in the movies and everything. They're roasting a steer on the fireplace and all that. That's not quite like that. The bedroom was very, very nice, and we had our own showers, and that was inside the building. And this is a picture of the kitchen. I thought that would be interesting for you people to see. They have all the modern conveniences outside. It looks like it's back about year 2000 or about year 100 or 200 or 300. A lot of those buildings are old buildings. I mean, they've been around for a long while. And then the next was the recognition they gave us for the Battle of Normandy, and that's this medal right here. And then from there, they had another ceremony where I got the Legion of Honor, the Chevalier Legion of Honor, and the French President Hollandale was there and presented the medals, and he was the president of France, and they had the mayors come up and get the medals and pin it on each of the soldiers, each one of us. And then this is the big day, D-Day, 70 years. This is June the 6th. There were 22 heads of the state there. There were President Obama, of course, and President Hollandale, and Queen Elizabeth, and President Putin, and Prime Minister of Canada, King of Belgium, King of Netherlands, Italy's President, King of Norway, Polish President, and German Chancellor. Also, there were people from Denmark, Holland, just to name a few. So we were supposed to be sitting in the front row, but because of so many dignitaries, we got pushed back a little bit. That's what chose us to the fifth row. the fourth or fifth row. The dignitaries took over the front row. We were supposed to fly over on the presidential plane, flight number 1, and finally ended up, the president said, well, we can only take 3 of you, so which 3 do you want to go? And our leader said, you take us all or don't take any. So nobody flew over with the president. Of course, that was the time to remember he was closing the Arlington Cemetery down. Veterans couldn't get in. So he wasn't the best. He didn't want a bunch of veterans flying with him, I don't think. Anyway, this is a picture of Joe Wright. No,
This is the one, the arrow.
the arrows, that's where I was sitting. So it wasn't too far back, but and then this is a picture of Joe Riley on the left. He had his original uniform that he had for when he was in World War II. And then Brandon Pope here was a tour escort, and he was Barbara's contact, checking on me all the time, see I was taking my pills and I was doing okay. He called him up and said, you know, what's going on, you know? And anyway, you know, on D-Day, they had about, I don't know, 15,000, I don't know how many more, probably more paratroopers jumped. That was the early morning, and it was still dark out when they jumped. But on this day, particular day, they only had 1,200, and they were from all over the Germany and Greece and Italy and France. Each paratrooper from a different country had different chutes, and they landed right down in front of us.
And that's where Whiskey 7 was.
Oh yeah,
That's
you
where
read about
Whiskey
Whiskey
7
7.
was.
Yeah.
You probably had Whiskey 7. You've heard about that. And this is at the St. James, France. It was the American cemetery there, the Eisenhower, the Brittany American cemetery, and he designed this a little bit different than just all the crosses in a straight line. You see, they're curved, and there was a place for the Germans at that. This was a smaller cemetery than the one at Omaha Beach is. I think they said around 5,400, something like that, were buried there. And this is a picture of the current general of the paratroops, 104th Airborne on the right, and of course Joe Riley and myself, and then his colonel who was with him all the while. And one of the things we got talking about was when Joe landed, he said it was dark out, couldn't see, and General pulled out of his pocket. He said, "You remember one of these?" And he had one of these crickets.
Oh, yeah.
Cricket. And Joe said, "Yeah." He said, "I lost mine." He said, "Here, take mine." And I thought that was pretty kind of neat. But that's the way they communicated in an early hour. That if you saw somebody out there, you clicked it. If they clicked back, you knew they were another paratrooper. If they didn't click back, you shot your shoot. You better hang on to your clicker back then. Or you're in big trouble. And this is Joe and I looking at the different crosses. There was 25,000 crosses there. I tell you, this is really hit hard. I mean, this is brought me to my knees almost. I thought, all those guys, you know, they're not going to be able to tell these stories. They're gone. They're not coming back to tell the story. If I didn't tell them, who's going to tell them for them? And that's why I felt certain responsibility that I had to go ahead and set up a series of talks and talk to people about it, so that at least they have some idea. I know most of you probably, somewhere in the family, you probably had somebody who was involved in World War II. I know people say, well, my uncle was there, my father was there, you know, my cousin was there, somebody in the family, pretty every family, I think every family was affected in one way or another with somebody being in service. And it was the only time I really seen America really pull together as a group. You didn't, everybody just jumped in there and did what they had to do. It isn't like, I argue because, oh, I don't, you said that, so we can't do that, we got to do this. that's going on today, you know, well, we won't go there. So
It's not in
anyway,
your book.
not my book anyway, but it's in here, it bothers me. But, and the next is, you know, this is the big, Utah beach was over 50, 60 miles of beach that we had to get coordinated at, coming across from the channel. You know, Omaha Beach, Gold, which was primarily the British, the Juno British, and the Sword was Canadian.
No, got that backwards. Canadian was Juno.
Oh, Juno, okay, back, okay. And all that stuff had to be coordinated, bringing all those ships and planes and everything over in time. It must have been a tremendous, because they didn't have the computers like we have today to do that, all that kind of scheduling and getting everybody there at the right time. Some of the boats were slow. They had to account for that so that they would be there at the time of the landing. And I had, I guess, a tunnel vision. All I could see was Omaha Beach, because that's all I knew. And so 70 years later, you know, it was like Paul Harvey, you find out what the rest of the story was. 70 years later. Although a couple of things came up on the radio that I recognize and that I understand, but I was like a lot of American soldiers that were up there in the combat field. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't tell my family much about it at all. I tell her, and we just try to keep it all down. And this has kind of brought it back up again, you know, in a way. When I was discharged, he said, well, here's your $21, see you around. That was about it. Because they didn't have anything set up at that particular time for, you know, I mean, it was like 12 million veterans out there. And, you know, then they came up with going back to school. He said, we can't all let these guys sit around. We got to do something. So they opened up the schools and the scholarships and all kinds of things trying to get the veterans. And that's what really made us a greater generation, because those fellows that came back, they really, you know, were good engineers, good builders, good thinkers, and they put the country back together again. And then this is a picture overlooking Omaha Beach. You see down there in the lower corner, that's the path we came when we came in. And then I was thinking about all the memories that had happened back then at that particular point in time. And then this is the next one is the 70-year, 1944, we crossed the channel, and the beach looked a lot like the next picture. When we came in, there was equipment, strafing, there was planes flying over, bumper to bumper, plane to plane to plane. They just kept coming and bombing, and the earth was shaking, and we could hear machine gun fire, and the Luftwaffe would come down at night and try to put a scare into us, drop bombs, and the aircraft, the anti-aircraft was shooting their tracers up at the planes, and I mean, whoa, what am I getting into here? And that was my first valley of death, I guess, I've walked through. Some of the things that happened there were really, really bad. And then we go from there. This is the hedgerows. And the hedgerows, we started playing just before the hedgerows, and we worked up to the hedgerows. On one occasion, I was running across the field, and I could hear this 88 coming in. I said, that's got Joe Mack written all over it. I hit the ground, and I waited and waited. So it was a thump. It didn't go off. It was a dud. So I got up and got out of there. Now, I call that divine intervention. But actually what probably happened was the Polish women, they had working in the ammunition factories with German guards, when the German guards weren't looking, they would put a dud in there once in a while. I must have caught one of those duds. That's all I can say. I mean, but anyway, it seemed to me it was divine intervention that somehow that wasn't my particular time. And then another time I was, well, the first German soldier I saw dead was in front of well, there was cider in there. And the guy said, well, you go down and get a cup of cider. I said, what for? I don't want cider. Well, go down. And I looked at, and there's a dead German soldier, his head must have been hit in the head or whatever, and there was maggots all over him. I thought, oh my gosh, you know, what a sight that was. And that was just the beginning of seeing things. And the next, my big next event was, I was out as first scout, and I was going down one of these hedgerows on the side here, and the German, I see the German fellow coming down across the way, and they told me to be careful because there could be American soldiers over there in your right flank. Well, these had on a dark uniform. I said, well, you're supposed to have a gray uniform, the German army. I guess they were SS troopers. Anyway, I said, hey, and psh, oh boy, I thought it was going to take my head off. Well, 5 bullets passed my ear there. Again, I think it was divine intervention. Anyway, I ducked down. I said, this guy's trying to kill me. I said, this is it. He said, it's going to be me or him. So I ran up. I go up a ways on the hedgerow. I pop up and go up a ways, pop up, go up a ways and pop up. Then I went down and I went right back where I was. He was looking for me up here. I went, and he was coming here. I had a clean shot at him. So he's looking at the wrong place. So and out of the woods came another German. And he said, Hans, Hans, Hans. So I had a clean shot at him too. So, I mean, I tell you, you know, the first time you do that, that stays with your memory. You know, I'm going to carry that to my grave with me. But there was a lot more after that. I mean, that was just the beginning. And I don't know, we had different places where one crossroads section, there was, they had these big crossroads. Well, you see the roads, but, well, we had another map one showed the crossroads better. But the Germans had that all zeroed in because we no more got to one of those crossroads and all of a sudden the shells came in, mortars, 88s, everything, seemed like everything, all hell broke loose. And I told this guy to get down, and he was standing up and he didn't get down in time, and it blew both of his legs off, and just a pile of inwards were there. And good thing they have dog tags because I don't think they would have had trouble trying to identify who it was. And I look up above, there was a tank up there, American tank, and there was this guy halfway out in the tank, and I thought, oh, that's funny. I took another look, I said, oh, he looks like an African American. He wasn't an African American. He was a GI, he'd been roasted like a hot dog. He never got out of the tank in time. You know? And you know, all these things, like bing, 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 like a car accident, you know, happened so fast that, you know, it's hard to take it all in, you know. You were there, and you think back and you say, wow, how did I ever get out of that one? And that was, as far as I'm concerned, divine intervention. And some of the other things that happened during the Battle of the Bulge, I was a sergeant then. I started out as a private, because I was in combat, I was the only one left, they made me sergeant. So anyway, he said, he replaced me, come up, he said, I don't know, Sergeant. He said, I don't want to keep up or not. I said, why? He said, well, my feet are all swollen. I said, well, take off your boot and show me. And he took off his boot, and his feet had cracked, and there was gangrene. I said, you better get back. You know, he said, well, I don't want to leave you up here alone. Well, you need my help. I said, I know we need all the help we can get, but you need your feet too. You're going to be useless to us. And you know, situations like that would come up. And I remember one night I was near Bastogne, and it was snowy and windy, and I put the tarp down on some snow and put my sleeping bag on and sleep bag, put another tarp over me, and I fell asleep, and I dreamt, oh, I'm at a beach, I'm warm, oh, it feels so good. First time I've been warm in a long time. and something, I thought, wow, I better get up. In the last minute I got up, and if I hadn't got up, I probably would be just a block of ice. That's what happened to a lot of those guys. They would go out to these snowmounds after when they could get in there, and the soldier was like this here, he'd be frozen solid like that. They just, taken over like that. And these are stories that I know people, maybe you don't like to hear them, but this is actually what went on. This is the thing. And this is the tour that the 28th went in. I also got to go from the hedgerows into Paris, and we liberated Paris. And that was a wild time. We had de Gaulle, Patton, Montgomery, all the generals from all the countries were there on reviewing stand, and we all went by, saluted them when we went by, and it was the first time I got any blisters on my feet, walking on all those cobblestones. And we went over to, I would say maybe a working class section of town, and we were supposed to be just go into people's front yards and stay there overnight. And of course, they thought that possibly, this is the picture of the Arc de Triomphe. That's me, way over there where that arrow is. Oh. That's where I was. And
it was on a stamp.
And it was on a stamp too. But the French people were very, very, very happy to see us. And like I say, those people, the working class people, were thanking us, and when they realized that we were going to go in and kick the meals out of the house and sleep with the women, why they were bringing out hot water, and a couple of them had an egg, a couple of eggs, and they shared with us what they had, And that was another story too. At Christmas time in the Battle of the Bulge, our unit had been lost the kitchen. So they could smell all these turkeys cooking all the way around us. And I went to 3 different white kitchens, and they said, oh, we only have enough to feed your own troops. And one guy said, well, you might go down and tell, there's a black outfit down the road, African American, they call them black back then. And anyway, they said, maybe they will offer you something. So we went down, and he looked at us for just me and this other fellow, and I guess we looked like a bunch of sad sacks. Anyway, he said, well, give me your tray there. So I gave him the tray, and he hooked up with, I put turkey on there, mashed potatoes, gravy. Here's the whole works, He said, here. But listen, I think I took away from that. He knew what it was like to be starving. They knew in these other kitchens, well, they had always had plenty. But, it made a difference. I found that later on in life, too, that a lot of times those people would donate, even though they would have very little to donate. At least they donated something. Or these people that drove in with Ferraris and Cadillacs and everything, they just walked right by you. They wouldn't even put a nickel in the can. That's, and I thought, I would made me think of that story, going back to that. And of course, this is the picture of you have all these different medals, Purple Heart and all that stuff. And I was all of 100, and when I went in, I had a 26-inch waistline, and the guy said, well, we don't have pants any smaller than 28, so here's 28-inch. So I don't know whether I ever got to fill them out or not. But, I weighed 125 pounds there, I think, or 122. Anyway, it wasn't very big. the rifle was almost as tall as I was with the band in it.
Well, at this point, I jump in and say, you know, Dad's showing off all his medals, and I did go ahead and there was once-in-a-lifetime replacement for all the medals, and he only had half of them, and most of them were missing the backs of them, because as kids, we didn't realize what the meaning was behind those, and Dad didn't talk about it, and so we played with them and ruined them, and they were in disrepair, and he had brought back a couple of Nazi flags too, and we had a parade one day with Nazi flags, the medals, and he came home from work and marched us all inside, and that was the end of that. But this picture here, you can see this is the young kid, this is the 18-year-old that went into service, that was the wise guy, the swell guy, the guy that liked the music, that collected baseball cards and comic books, and, you know, just graduated from high school, was working at IBM, had it all. And this guy here was after what he saw. He saw war, and you can see in his eyes that he's seen some pretty bad things, and so his innocence was lost during World War II. I just wanted to point that out.
And then we had a day off, and one of the teachers at the school there contacted Joe Riley and Thomas Joe and myself wanted to know if we would come. And the leader of our outfit said, "Well, you don't have to go, but it's up to you guys." So we went anyway, and I'm glad we did, because you know, they could talk in English. They asked us questions, and each Joe would ask a question, I would take a question, and Thomas Joe would take a question, and we answered the questions. And this is the class picture with the three of us setting up in front. But, you know, the things I got from the whole story, from this whole trip, was that freedom. Freedom is a very special thing. I don't think here in America the younger people today don't appreciate the freedoms they have, or they did have. But are we really free? And we haven't been working at it. And what's happening? We're somewhere between socialism and capitalism, mostly towards socialism as far as I'm concerned. And I think we've got to do some changing here in America. We've got to get out and get people to vote and get into politics, find out who they're electing, what their backgrounds are, and take an interest in the country. Because once we lose that freedom, we're never going to get it back. And the way they control us today, you know, look at the schools. You know, if they don't teach what they ask you to teach, you don't get your entitlement. The churches are told the same thing. You don't preach politics. If you do, you don't get your entitlement. Everything is based on that entitlement. If you don't even make a nickel, you go in and file your income tax, you get $12,000 right off the bat for your entitlement. You know, I mean, they throw money around like it was crazy, but that's the way they control people. That's why, in my opinion, they open up the borders. Yet we're you know, overall the whole world, 1 million abortions a year. Is that right? And we worry about, you know, things that are going on now, and things that have gone in the past we don't seem to learn. That's the way I feel, that there's got to be a better way. And we better start talking to our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. They don't teach a lot of these things that we learned in school. They don't teach about the government. They've never heard of the Civil War. They don't know half what's going on with the country. All they know what it's got for them? Baseball, football, basketball. That's their God. That's what they play. I mean, that's what they know. Ask them about anything about America? Well, I don't know. I didn't hear about that. You know, that's wrong. They got to turn it around somehow. And I don't know. The only way we can do it is probably with one person at a time, talking to the grandkids, trying to get them interested in going deeper into what freedom really means. Either that, or we're going to lose it, and if you lose it, you're not going to get it back right away. In closing, would you like to stand? I'd like to pray. May God, your kingdom come, for all peace of every race and language, your kingdom of justice, of peace, of love, and may all the earth be filled with your glory. We offer our prayer. Amen. And now, if you'd like to join me in God
bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Please be seated. Does anybody have any questions before we close? Anybody have questions? Yes.
I have a question. When you showed about that Crozier family, the French people, were they from an area close to where your area of operation was?
Yes.
Or they were?
Yeah, they were.
So they were probably just farmers or town people?
Yeah,
He was the mayor.
He was the mayor.
Oh, he was the mayor. Okay.
He was the mayor there.
Yeah.
And his brother was the mayor of another town. So they're into politics, yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
I have one thing to say. Well, some people know I talk a lot, but I just came from, in 2016, we're going to be hosting the Global Mural Conference in upstate New York here. And I want to start right here in this room, because a lot of good things started here. And I want to do a mural to honor this greatest generation. From what I heard today, and we'll make it dynamic so nobody forgets.
Thank you.
That's 25,000.